the audience that is in the room.
Yeah, we have people connected online too. So and the questions will be coming from either the
both
audience and online.
And how many people are online right now? Hello.
Hello.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we can start. Let me just quickly introduce you to the audience.
Sure.
Марина без желаний присоединилась к нам из Ливана. Марина очень хотела попасть на конференцию офлайн и познакомиться с комьюнити. И мы очень надеемся, что все получится на следующей конференции. Марина расскажет про релизы и как их можно померить. So Marina, I think you can start presenting.
I can start?
Yeah.
Okay. So hello everyone. My name is Marina, as Alexi just said. I'm coming from a company called Murex from the office in Beirut, Lebanon. 4 years ago, we went through an agile transformation. The company went through an agile transformation. And as part of this transformation, I was assigned the role of the release test lead, which was needed back then. As part of this role, I had to ensure that we were delivering the adequate level of quality for our clients and looking at our releases from their inception till their delivery to our clients. Now, so during this presentation, I will show you how I did it, what were the challenges, what were the obstacles, and how did we solve them, and how was I able to meet this mission for this role. But before starting and going into the deep details of how we did it, I will talk a bit about the company I work in. So Murex deals with capital markets technology. So we build financial softwares for banks or for financial institutions. And we have been doing this for more than 32 years, innovating in partnership with our clients. Throughout 4 regional hubs, so New York, Paris, Beirut, and Singapore, with 18 offices covering all time zones. And you can see here Moscow, where you are right now. We have an office there. We have 57,000 users who are using the system, part of 300 plus clients and 60 countries. So now you can look at the numbers and you might say that, okay, those numbers are not that much compared to Google, for example. So 300 plus clients is not that much as a number, but in this industry, it is something. And it is actually acknowledged within this industry. We are the overall #1 top technology vendor in this field. And this industry recognizes it. So if we go back to my role as a release test lead, the role that was assigned to me, it was a big challenge for me to ensure a certain level of quality for a very complex software, which is financial software. By design, they are very complex, for highly demanding clients in terms of quality, and keeping in mind that I had to keep the high reputation of the company within all the process. So it was a big challenge for me as a release test lead. And the question always popped up in my mind, which was, how will I measure this release quality? Because if I wasn't able to measure this release quality, I will never be able to ensure it at any level. So I started looking on the internet because I didn't have a background regarding how to measure this kind of quality. And I think that since you are in the quality assurance industry, you know about it, that it's very complicated to measure it. So I went and searched on the internet for KPIs that already existed, where companies already use those KPIs to be applied them directly on our site. And if you see those KPIs, they need to be based on data that is logged in our systems. And if I went and looked for specific data for a certain KPI, if that exists in our systems, it wasn't always adapted to our context. So we couldn't use the KPIs as they were used and defined on the internet, and apply them directly in our context. So I went to the other extreme, which was the definition of quality. So without looking at the KPIs themselves, going on the internet and searching for software quality definitions, thinking that I might adapt them to our context and find KPIs that can relate to those definitions. And as you can see here, scrolling, the definitions were very philosophical, so very far from reality, very far from concrete measurements. And it wasn't something that I could get inspired from. Okay, until I found a definition that was between both. So between the philosophical part, but at the same time close to reality, where I was able to adapt this definition to our context and associate it to measurements. And this definition, if some of you might have seen it, is quality is value to some person at some time who matters. So from this definition, if we were able to define the values that matter to the persons who matter today for us, we will be able to relate to those values specific KPIs that we have in our own systems and evaluate those values, consequently evaluate the quality that is perceived by our clients. And I would really like to thank Jerry Weinberg, Michael Bolton, and James Bach, because Gerald just started defining the definition, so long time ago, quality is value to some person, and then Michael Bolton and James Bach added to it to make it as complete as it is. And you will see, we are thanking them because you will see later on in the slides that everything we did within the company was based on this definition. And you will see as well that the slides and the presentation have been built in a way that you can get yourself inspired from them, take them as they are, take the KPIs that we define, the logic that we define, so that you can apply them as well in your workplaces. So by the end of the session, what will you know? You will know how we defined the values, what were the challenges, what were the tooling that we used, etc. Second, I am going to show how we define the KPIs to assess the status of those values that matter to the persons using the system. And step 3, I will describe how we gathered the feedback from the releases that were used by clients. And finally, how did we use those metrics within the company? For those who read a bit the summary of the talk, so our company has 2,000 plus employees. So using those metrics in this company size is challenging. And here I will as well describe how we use them, how we propagated them, and how we took actions based on what was defined with the challenge of the size of the company. So step 1. Step 1 was to define the values, okay, for our release users and consumers. To define them, of course, I didn't define them alone because I'm part of the quality assurance department and I need to talk to other parties to gather all the information, gather what is the value definition that they see with their own perception. So we did a lot of brainstorming sessions with the related stakeholders. So from quality assurance, not only myself, a working group from quality assurance team, from client services teams, the teams that deploy and implement the software, the solution at the level of our clients, with the product management, so who designed the product, and with the development teams. So doing brainstorming sessions with those stakeholders led us to the values, which are the leaf nodes. So here, for example, we have the value client requirements are identified and delivered by release. It is something that is not related to the measurements and KPIs in our systems, but it's something qualitative that the consumer wants. So anything that the consumer required in the system, they want to see it in the release. So here, the leaf nodes are the values. The father nodes of the leaf nodes, which are those 5 categories, are just logical categorization of values. And the father node is the release quality. So based on the status of the 5 categorization of values, we were able to assess our release quality. So this was the first step, defining the values, what matters really for our clients, and we defined them with all those teams. Step 2 came that, okay, those values are very qualitative. We needed to associate them to measurements to be able to say if they were green, not green, do we need to take action or not. So the second step was to evaluate the status of those values through available and measurable KPIs, through KPIs that we had in our systems. So let's take, for example, this value that was already in the graph before. Client's requirements are identified and delivered by release. So this is a value for a person. This is what the person searches within. It's one of the values that the person searches in the software. To be able to measure it, to measure its status and to evaluate its status, we looked at this KPI. In the company, we use Jira, okay, for our software development processes. So we said that for this value to be green, to be met, we needed to have 100% of our client requested features, Jira tickets, with a status equal closed at the release branch creation. So with this sentence being equivalent to the qualitative sentence, we were able to evaluate the status of this value and take actions accordingly. I will give an example. Okay. Suppose that we had 300 features that are targeting a certain release. And we still have 4 months to release. We have 45 features that are done, which is the 15% of the 300 features. And the question was, during the release life cycle, are we going to converge to this KPI or not? So this KPI was good at the end of the release life cycles. Our release life cycle was of 6 months. But if we leave it and we don't monitor it throughout all our release life cycle, at the end, if it's red, we can't do anything. We cannot adjust anymore. So we had to evaluate this value and this KPI throughout our release life cycle. And here is the example at 4 months, for example, at 2 months, so we still have 4 months to release. We did 45 features. And the question out of 300. And the question here is our progress good or not? If you want, since we are seeing each other, you can, for the person who think that it's good, raise your hand. Okay, and for the persons who think that it's not good, it's not a good progress, and see that we are not going to converge, I think that everybody else. Okay, great. So as you see, both of 2 sets of people who raised their hands are correct. Okay, there's nothing wrong about it because you looked at a certain reference and a certain assessment, a certain evaluation to say that we were green in terms of progress and in terms, or red in terms of process. And this was very challenging on our side. So when we had management meetings where we had product development, product management teams, with development teams, with client services teams, with quality assurance teams, meeting all together and deciding if we were green or red, it was mission impossible. And we always diverged and never converged to a certain action. So we had to set a certain reference that we agreed upon upfront on it, saying that if we reach this value before 4 months, we were green. And if we reach less than this value before 4 months, we were red. So what is this model that we define? We said that at the target date for this KPI, it was 100% of all the requested feature, client requested features done at the target date, which was the release branch creation. And we said that before 1 month of this target date, we shouldn't expect to have 100%. If we have 65%, we are okay. We are green to reach the 100% after 1 month because we still have 1 month. Before 2 months, we said it was okay to reach 43%, 3 months, 26%, 4 months, 16%. So it is as if we discounted the target value that we needed to meet at the target date based on how much time we still have left. And we named this target result the timed target result. So because it depends on the time. And how did we evaluate our status? So if, for instance, before 4 months, we met 0 to 30% of the timed target value, we were in the red zone. If we met 30 to 70% of the timed target value, we were in the yellow zone. And if we met 70 to 100% of the timed target value at a certain point in time, we were in the green zone. And this is how we evaluated our status, our progress towards the final KPI throughout all the release life cycle. Now you might ask yourselves, why did we put 16%, 26, 43, 65? Why didn't we put other values? Well, there was a logic behind it. And of course, if it is something that could be useful in your workplaces, you will. I put my email at the end of the slide, so I can share with you the calculations, the models that we put in place, in case you want to use them as they are, or you want to adjust them. So we use the Fibonacci series. Okay, why did we use it? Because we said that the farther we are from the target date, the more uncertainty we have. Like the poker planning, the Fibonacci series is used because the more uncertainty you have, so the bigger the size of the story is, the more uncertainty you have, so it grows in a greater at the end of the series. So here, the farther we are from the target date, the more tolerant we are. And here we plotted the time factor, which is the value by which we need to divide the target value to be able to have the time target results. Let's take an example. So here, if we take 4 months, okay, at 4 months, we need to divide by 4 it's here, so 5 point something. Okay, so when we divided by 5 point something, the 100% value, we had 16%. So this is the curve that we used as the factor to discount our target value and to define our time target value. So if we go back to our initial problem, so we go into the meeting and we want to see if we are green or red to agree on actions. We did 45 out of 300 features before 4 months. So we are at 15%. Before 4 months, we needed to do 16% based on the model that we all agreed on before entering the meeting. So in total, we did 90% of, so we reached the green zone. So the 0 point, we did 90% of the time targeted result. So we reached 90% of this value and we are here in the green zone. So we were good. Okay, so based on this model that we agreed on earlier, we said that we were fine. And the only thing that we discussed to avoid divergence in the meeting was what action can we take? Do we need to discuss it further or no? Here, because it was green, we didn't discuss this value. We said, okay, we have a peace of mind. This value will be met at the target date. Let us go and dig on the values that are red. Now, as you can see here, I just showed one value and one KPI. And in the previous slide, you saw a lot of values. And for each value, you might have a lot of KPIs to be able to evaluate the status of the value. And we needed a visual representation for that, to be able to assess in one look the release quality and then zoom in on the areas where we needed actions to be taken. For this visualization, we used this visualization. So here, as you can see, we're zooming. The big circle is the release quality. The second level of circle was the logical categorization of values. The third level of circles were the values, and the last level of circles were the KPIs, the real measurements. And for each KPI, we put the color, and consequently, based on weighted average formulas, we colored the farther circles until we had a specific color for the release quality at a certain point in time. And with this visualization, what was really beneficial in it is that, okay, in a single look, you can see what is the status of the quality, and you will be able to know why this release quality was yellow. Maybe because we had this area that was red, and you go and you zoom on this area and you take action, of course. Now, maybe in the room, you will not be able to see the writing explicitly. It's just intentional because it's masked. But of course, the code behind it, I can share it to you easily. So in case you want to send me an email. So to build this visualization, we use the D3 data-driven documents. It's an open source JavaScript library to create those kind of interactive visualization. It was easy to use. It was easy to use it, so we used a template of code and we added to it. So it's HTML, SVG, CSS, and easily we built this visualization. And as I said, in case you need it, do not hesitate to tell me. I can send you the details of the code in case you want to use it within your workplaces. So this was step 2. Okay. So during the release life cycle, we evaluated the status of our release quality. We met together, we adjusted to be able to have a green status for our release quality at the end of the release life cycle. Now, okay, we were green and we were happy, but who would really tell us if they were really happy? It was our clients. So our clients needed to tell us if indeed this release quality, our evaluation, our estimation was indeed green. They were really happy with the release quality. So this is where comes step 3. So not only we needed to evaluate the value before releasing to see if we are progressing towards our objectives, but we needed to evaluate as well our client's perception. So is this value was indeed green as we estimated it in the eyes of our clients? And to do so, we needed to define another KPI, which was different because after releasing, we had all those KPIs done. So this KPI was green. But we needed another KPI to evaluate the status of this value and assess it in the eyes of our clients if indeed it was green or not. So here, we associated this value after releasing to this KPI. We said that if the number of defects that are equivalent to two severity, so the KPI was number of defects should not exceed the equivalent of 2 severity 1 regressions per release. So we said that if for each release that was taken by our clients, we didn't exceed the equivalent of 2 severity 1 regressions per release, we were okay. And this value was green. And this value was well seen by our clients, like we assessed it before releasing. I will give you an example, an example as well, just to be able to imagine how we did it. Suppose that we have had 100 defects with the following severity and type that have been seen by our clients. So this is for release R1. And this is for release R2. Okay. Here you have the type, which is bug and regressions. And here you have the severity. S1 being the most severe type of issue. S1, S2, S3, and S4. And here again, the question was, each time we looked at this data, did we regress or progress in terms of quality? Is release R2 better in terms of client perceived quality, or release R1 is better in terms of client perceived quality? And I think if I do the same exercise and I ask you to raise your hand for people who see we regressed and for people who saw we didn't regress, we will have as well a split. There will not be a single answer. And here again, we needed to build a reference to say, okay, when we look at this release, we needed to have a reference to compare to and say we are green or we are red. We all agreed that this reference should take into account that regressions had greater weights than bugs. And we all agreed that the S1 defects had weights greater than S2, greater than S3, greater than S4. And we all agreed that we needed to base our weights, the weights that we needed to take into account based on historical data. Why was this important? Why was it important to look back at our releases to see what were the numbers to put the weights? Because if our S1s are really very lower than our S2s, if we put a very high weight for our S2s, we might hide the effect of S1s. So that's why it was very important to take into account the historical data within the formula. And we ended up with this formula, okay, which was called equivalent S1 regressions. Okay, why did we call it equivalent S1 regressions? Because the weight of S1 regression was equal to 1. We normalized all the rest of defects into S1 regressions. So S2 regressions represented the 10th of an S1 regression as effect to our clients. S3 regressions 1/25 and S4 regression 1/50. And for the bugs, we took all the weights of regressions and divided them by 2. So 1/2, 1/20, 1/50, and 1/100. Now, in case you want to use it within your workplace, this formula, you can. But I suggest to look at your historical data to see if the weights are compatible with your historical data. If in case you detect no S1 at all and you detect a lot of S2 and very few S3, the weights should be adapted accordingly so that when you see a change in the count of your defects, to see an effect on the ESR and to evaluate it accordingly. So let's get back to our initial problem. If we go and calculate the ESR of release R1 with this formula, we had 199. And if we calculate the ESR of R2 with this formula, we had 3 as ESR. So the feeling of release 1 was 1.9 equivalent S1 regression. So as if the release R1, our clients only noticed 1.1 S1 regression, 1.9 S1 regression. And for release R2, it is as if they noticed 3.09 S1 regressions. So we regressed in terms of quality. Our newer release wasn't as the first release. And here, why was it beneficial? Because this formula told us, okay, we are in the red zone, we needed to take action. And all the meetings that we did around those KPIs were to decide on what actions to take instead of diverging and saying and arguing if we were green or red. Because at the end, if we don't have reference, everybody is right. And here it's just the ESR that was calculated for one release at a certain point in time. In order to analyze our ESR, it was very important to plot them throughout time and throughout releases. So we used this visualization to draw our releases. So here we have 7 releases, R1, R2, R3 till R7. In the y-axis, it is the ESR per release. And here it's the time axis. But the time axis was defined in a special way, actually. It wasn't defined as an absolute manner. So here, if you look at 1 means 1 month after the market availability of a release. Here, 2 months after the market availability of the release. Because depending on the age of the release, you will have more defects maybe or less defects. And you cannot compare releases if their ages are different. Because a release that just went live is different than a release that has been for 2 years in the market. And you cannot compare the ESR. So it was important to compare our releases at the same age. So after 1 month of their market availability, after 2 months, 3 months, etc. And the curve that is the longest one is actually the oldest release. So this release has been market available for 41 months. This one for 35, this one for 28, etc. And the newest one, maybe it's the pink one. Yeah. The pink one has been 3 months old. So this way we were able to compare our releases together throughout time to see any pattern, to see anything that we can enhance. On top of that, it was important at a certain point in time to drill down per client, because sometimes a release had a very high ESR just because of one client who wasn't happy. And it was important to do the analysis, it was important, of course, to look at it as a release as a whole, as a starting point. But to understand why did we have this high release ESR, it was sometimes needed to drill down per client, because some clients had specific configurations, specific customizations, they had specific usages that led to this high ESR. So on top of that, we had as well graphs to drill down by client. This visualization, in case you want to imitate it, was actually built by ClickSense. So it's a BI tool. It is a powerful tool. It was very beneficial for us, and we used it happily. So those were the 3 steps. So during the release build and after release build, how are we evaluating our release quality? Now, the colors are very nice, and it is as the Christmas tree, but it's not enough. to just look at those colors and put them to look at. We needed to use them and to take actions based on them. So the first step was actually to use those metrics, because without using them, they don't have a meaning at all. And without taking actions based on them, they don't have a meaning at all. So we use them in two different contexts. The first context was for global decisions. So at the level of the departments, at the level of the managers of the departments. And the second part was taken for specific decisions. And you will see later on in the second slide for the specific decisions. So for the global decisions, how did we make it? How did we use those metrics? What were the dynamics behind it? So we built a certain ceremony. We defined it and we set it in place back then. That was called the release board meeting, which included around 10 persons who were meeting once per month to assess those metrics, to see if the current release that is being built is on track and to take actions accordingly, or to look at our releases after they are out to see if we needed to improve something in the future and to get the sponsorship. So in this meeting, we had people from software engineering management, quality assurance management, portfolio management, software development management, release management, production and architecture management, and client services management. So if we didn't have those KPIs, we could have easily diverged in those kind of meetings, because each head of department had their own point of view, and every point was relevant to be argued and debatable. But with those metrics, we converged very quickly on actions. What were the kind of actions that we took during those global decisions meeting? For the meetings during the release build, at a certain point in time, and it really happened, our release didn't have the adequate level of quality at a certain point in time during its build. And we decided during a 1-hour meeting with all those stakeholders met that we needed to push the market availability of the release. Usually those kind of decisions are very complicated to take, because it's not only the software engineering department to take those kind of decisions. We need to validate with our client services department that there is no impact on a certain client, that we don't have specific commitments with our clients, certain expectations. So there are a lot of validations that need to be done to take those kind of decisions. But because of the metrics and because of the setup of this meeting, regular meeting, this decision was taken in a 1-hour meeting without any delay. And it was very beneficial, and the impact, we didn't have any negative impact on our clients by doing this decision, because we had client services who warned us for specific clients where we set specific workarounds. The second type of decisions that we took in this meeting after releasing was actually the sponsorship to do global client retrospectives. So for a specific client where we had a high ESR, we had the sponsorship from all those departments to build a working group and to do this global retrospective. Without the meeting and without the KPIs and the metrics that we showed, it was mission impossible. Each time we needed to do a certain retrospective, either QA did it alone, or the product management did it alone, or the developers did it alone, or client services did it alone. It was the first time where we agreed all together and sponsored such a project so quickly to trigger a client retrospective that showed as well to be beneficial, and where we took actions accordingly. Now, this was for using the metrics in global decisions. How did we use them in specific decisions, and why was it important to use them in specific decisions? There's a management cliche that resonates a lot, which was back then, what gets measured gets done. So what we're measuring in the previous meeting, in the global decision meeting, if we don't share it with the stakeholders that are on the ground, that are effectively executing and developing the software, assuring its quality, designing it, we will never reach those metrics. We never reach those KPIs to be green. So it was important to share those metrics to all the concerned stakeholders that were in the development life cycle of our releases. And those were shared to 800 concerned stakeholders who were actually our software factory. During those communication, what was important during the communication was to share the basic tools to analyze the data. We didn't do all the tools that they needed because some teams needed to adjust their tools to be able to apply them within their context. So we shared basic tools, the circle, the graphs, etc. But in case they wanted to do detailed analysis within their team, they needed to build specific tools and customize them for their own usage. In other words, we focused on the why it was important to look at those metrics, and the how. We gave a basic level of the how of the tooling, and we let the stakeholders fine-tune it. So this is how we did it in Murex. This is how we defined the values, how we defined how to assess the values during the release build, how we gathered the feedback from our clients after releasing to see if we were really green when we released. And this is how we use them to be able to ensure the right level of quality of our releases. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I don't know if you have any question. We still have some time for questions. This is my Twitter and this is my email. Feel free to contact me anytime. And in case you need some artifacts from the presentation, do not hesitate as well to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Yeah, we have a question.
Hello. Thank you for presentation.
Hello.
I have a question about your first step.
Yeah.
Can you switch slides
to the side? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because I put you on another screen to look at you like that. Okay, I will switch this.
Can you please switch slides?
Yeah, you're seeing my slide right now?
Yes.
Do you want the
right
first
here, right
one?
here.
The
whoa,
first
whoa, whoa.
step?
No. Next, maybe not first, second, I guess. Next slide.
No.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, this one?
About, yes, second one. And
yeah.
a bit more pictures.
Yeah,
a bit more pictures.
Okay, this
yes,
one.
This.
Okay,
you counted, you said that you count percentage of target tickets.
Yeah.
And I guess that I have a question about this. Yeah. So question is how it works when all 300 tasks have different estimations. For example, one task you can say that it's about one Scrum point, and the other task is about 13 Scrum points. So how it matching about total completion?
Yeah, I understand. So here, just to make sure that I understood well your question, it is you're asking about the granularity of our features, of our Jira tickets. So if, for example, the business value of a certain user story is higher than another one, are we giving more weight to the one that has a greater business value? It's a very good question. It is something that was very challenging during our Agile transformation. It wasn't very easy at the beginning because we had different granularity in terms of user stories. We had some user stories that had very big business value and others who had very small business values. And this model cannot be applied to it. I didn't know your name, so like the person who just asked the question said, it was logical. You know, we cannot consider a feature who is that big with a feature that's so small and compare them together. If this one is close and this one is close, it delivers the same value to our clients. Now, this was at the beginning of our Agile transformation. However, when we progressed within our Agile transformation, we knew that this was a gap, and we worked on unifying the granularity of our features. So I don't know if you know the safest structure. So it's the scaled Agile framework. So we use a Scrum, but it's a scaled agile framework within which we work because we are 800 persons. It cannot be the simple agile structure. And as part of this safe structure, there are PIs, so program increments. Within those program increments, we said that a feature that could be requested by a client should be able we should be able to deliver it within one PI. And for those features that were defined that should be delivered in one PI and not more or less, we looked at them and compared them. And we ensured that, okay, this feature that used one PI to be developed is equivalent in terms of business value to the second feature that used one PI to be developed. And we compared those kinds of tickets. And we didn't compare, for example, features to epics. Epics who need, for example, 3 PIs to be done. You are absolutely right. It isn't logical at all. But instead, we looked at the same types and we categorized the types of our tickets in a way that how much it takes for each feature to be delivered. And we normalized it so that each object can be comparable. I hope I answered your question. Or
maybe someone else. Okay, we have another question.
Hello, maybe I missed,
Hello.
but how often you upgrade your KPI? And
okay, this
how
as
often
well is a very good question.
How often you meeting as a global level?
Okay, how much? Sorry, the second question was how much we meet at the global level. You mean?
I mean, how often you have a meeting as global level?
Yeah. Okay, for the first question, which is related to the KPIs, how many times we review them? Well, this study, to set those KPIs, we looked at around 5 years to set those KPIs. So those KPIs were based on the historical data of 5 years. Now, of course, if we are going to improve and look at this data, we need to look at it maybe not every 5 years, 2-3 years. But saying that we need to look at those KPIs to change them, to change the reference value every month, it is very time consuming and it doesn't provide the value that it needs. So the reference values, the 16, the 26, 43, 65, and 100, and the ones of the ESR are kept for 1-2 years. And then we review if they are still relevant as reference. However, the assessment of our progress, it is done every month. So during the release build, which is of 6 months back then, now it is 4 months, our release life cycle. 3 months is our release life cycle right now. Back then, when it was 6 months, we used to do the meetings every month because it was important to know what is our status every month, to have time to adapt accordingly. So this was for the current releases. For the releases that went live, we met every 3 months for the step 3, this one. So for step 2, during the release build, we met every month. And for step 3, to compare the ESR of the releases, we met every 3 months. Because every month, we will not have a change in the number of defects that our clients are catching that much. So we need to wait a bit to see the effect and to take actions accordingly. I don't know if I answered your question and if you need more clarification. Okay.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. And could you please come back to the slide with the target date and the target results?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Is the KPI achieved if the target result by the target date is like 95%? For example, by the 4 months date, you have 15% accomplishment. By the 3 months date, you have the probability that you didn't accomplish the 26% level, and it can be not 100% at the end of the date. So is the KPI accomplished then?
You mean that if we didn't meet the 26%, I'm sorry, I didn't understand well your question, because here at the target date, before 2 months, it's just an indicator if we are going to meet the 100%, but at the target date, we reevaluate it, if this is your question, of course. And we don't say that at 2 months we are green and we let everything go and we don't look anymore. At 4 months we look, at 3 months we look, at 2 we look, at 1 we look, until we reach the target date. To minimize the probability of not having a backup plan to adjust. Because if we look at 4 months and then we look directly at the target date, we don't have time to adjust and to take actions. So that's why you look at them every month to have time to adjust accordingly.
Okay, so if
I answered your question?
Yes, thank you. So if you didn't accomplish the result by the 2nd month, for example, so you move the target date. Am I right?
It might be an action to move the target date, but we prefer not to move the target date because we have client commitments. So what we do before 3 months, if we don't reach the 26%, we take other actions. We go and dig into the details with the teams. Why didn't we meet the 26%? Maybe we go and change the priorities within the Agile team to say, okay, those features are needs to be finished before other features, and this way the KPI we converge on it. So it's a way to take action, not directly push the target date, because this is the last option that we take. And before 3 months, we have a bit of flexibility. We have options, we have opportunities, we have ideas, and this way we converge. And after 2 months, we recheck. After the actions, are we still on track, or no, we are not at 43%. If we are, then we're okay. Otherwise, we take action.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that's all for questions, about questions. So, Alexei.
Cool. So yeah, I think we can
Thank
wrap
you
it up.
so much.
Thank you, Marina.
Have a
It was
nice day.
really awesome.
Thank you. I stop sharing my screen, Alexei.
Yep. Sure. I think people even sacrifice their lunchtime.
Oh, really?
Questions. Yeah. This is super cool. Yeah, thank you, Marina.
Thank you. Thank you.